I'm Claire Bennett, architect, founder of Viridian Studio, and the ex-wife of a man who, along with my best friend, betrayed me in a way no novel could have predicted. The three people I trusted most, my husband, my best friend, and my assistant, worked together to steal everything I'd built over 15 years, my ideas, my copyrights, my career, and nearly my identity. But I didn't stay silent. I turned betrayal into my weapon. And then I struck back, with intelligence, with evidence, and with the resilience of a woman pushed to her breaking point. Trust me, you won't want to miss what happened next. Before I share how I went from being deceived to coming out on top, let me know where you're watching from in the comments. And don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you've ever been through betrayal. Family, believe me, you'll want to hear what happens next. I came home early from Albany that April afternoon, my presentation folder still clutched against my chest. The investors hadn't even let me finish. But I'd brought something for Ethan anyway, a watercolor sketch of Echo Lake I'd found in an antique shop, knowing how he loved anything connected to water. Our house sat quiet in Brattleboro's artist quarter, spring light filtering through the maples. I pushed open the door to my studio, ready to set down my things. When I saw it, a tiny camera, no bigger than a lipstick tube, recording from between my design books. The red light blinked steadily. My hands didn't shake as I reached for it. Through the viewfinder, I saw my drafting table, my wall of sketches, and then movement. Ethan's familiar shoulders. A woman's laugh I knew too well. Naomi's dark hair falling across my blueprints as she leaned into him. I ejected the memory card, slipped it into my jacket pocket, turned off the camera, set it back precisely where I'd found it. Something else caught my eye. My sketches on the wall, the ones I'd drawn last month for the floating house project, had pencil marks that weren't mine. Corrections? Additions? Someone had been editing my work. I backed out of the studio, closed the door softly. In the kitchen, I poured myself water, drank it slowly. The house felt different now, like when you realize a painting's been hung slightly crooked for years. The front door opened. "Claire, you're home early," Ethan's voice, warm and surprised. Footsteps, 2 sets, trying to sound like one. "Traffic was light," I said, not turning from the sink. That night, I smiled through dinner. Naomi had stayed, of course. "We were just going over the documentary footage," she explained, her filmmaker hands gesturing too much. I nodded, passed the salad, asked about her new project on pioneering women. "Actually," she said, eyes bright, "I'm featuring some architectural designs that really showcase female innovation. Anonymous submissions, but powerful work." Ethan's fork paused, just for a second. After they left, Naomi to her loft, Ethan to his office, I pulled out my laptop. Started with emails, then contracts, then the forgotten folders I never checked. The pattern emerged like a photograph in developer fluid. 3 months ago, Ethan suggesting I sign a creative proxy to simplify our French partnership deal. "Just paperwork, babe. Makes the international transfers easier." 6 weeks ago, Naomi's production company registering new content, designs that looked eerily familiar, though I'd never released them publicly. 2 weeks ago, Dara, my assistant, requesting sudden leave for her sick mother, but her work files showed recent modifications, metadata tagged with D. Quinn. I found myself in the basement at 3 a.m., digging through boxes from our early years, our wedding photos, the lease for my first studio, and there, a folder labeled Viridian Dreams, my original business plan from age 22. Every page had been photocopied. I closed the box, climbed back upstairs. Ethan was snoring in our bed, one arm flung across my empty side. I lay down on the edge, careful not to wake him. Stared at the ceiling until dawn, my mind cataloging every shared password, every joint account, every person who had keys to our life. The betrayal was real, but it was bigger than bodies touching in secret. They were stealing my mind. I didn't confront anyone. Instead, I drove 2 hours north to Echo Lake, to my parents' old cabin where I'd first learned to draw. The place stood empty now. They'd died 3 years apart, Mom first, then Dad, as if he couldn't imagine staying without her. The electricity still worked. The phone line, too. I set up in the loft where my first drafting table had lived, where 19-year-old me had dreamed of changing skylines. From there, I made 2 calls. First, Wyatt Lind, the sharpest intellectual property lawyer in Vermont. We'd debated opposite sides in college. He'd lost, but gracefully. "Claire Bennett," he said, recognizing my voice. "What's been stolen?" "Everything." Second, Marisol Jang, ethical hacker, recommended by an artist friend who'd recovered her stolen paintings from a Turkish dealer. "I need a paper trail," I told her. "Financial records, login histories, file transfers." "Send me what you have," she said. "And Claire, don't log into anything joint from your regular devices anymore." I spent the next weeks living a double life. Days at the cabin, gathering evidence. Evenings at home, playing the oblivious wife. I watched Ethan watch me, saw him relax as I stayed predictable. I listened to Naomi gush about her documentary's funding, money that traced, Marisol discovered, to an account called Hale Visual Archive, deposits matching amounts withdrawn from Ethan's consulting firm. Dara returned from her family emergency with a new laptop and wouldn't meet my eyes. I gave her small tasks, watched her forward my files to an address that didn't exist in our company directory. The hardest part was the pretending, smiling when Ethan kissed me goodbye, laughing at Naomi's jokes, praising Dara's attention to detail. Inside, I was rebuilding myself document by document, proof by proof. The Vermont State Arts Exhibition opened in May. The centerpiece? Floating house on Echo Lake, my first real design, sketched when I was 19 before I knew Ethan, before Viridian Studio existed. Naomi's name appeared beneath it as creator. I stood in the gallery, champagne flute steady in my hand, watching her accept congratulations. She'd even invented a backstory. Inspiration striking during a childhood summer by the water. The details she'd stolen from stories I'd told her about my own summers there. Ethan's arm wrapped around my waist. "Beautiful work," he murmured. "Reminds me of your style." "Does it?" I took a sip, smiled at a passing curator. That night, they celebrated at our house. I excused myself early with a headache, but really I sat in my car running the final upload. At exactly midnight, emails landed in 53 inboxes, every sponsor, board member, and journalist connected to the exhibition. The package included security footage of Naomi in my studio, photographing my original sketches, the forged proxy agreement, Ethan's real signature overlaid with the fake one, bank records showing Ethan using Viridian funds to purchase my own copyrights under a shell company, audio of Naomi directing her assistant to age the sketches digitally. I didn't sign it. The sender remained anonymous, but I made sure to include one detail only I would know. The original sketch's coffee stain, upper right corner, from the morning I'd spilled my cup reaching for my first real inspiration. By 6 a.m., Naomi's phone was ringing nonstop. By 8 a.m., the exhibition had pulled her piece. By noon, Ethan was in his office with the door locked, shouting at lawyers. I made breakfast, scrambled eggs, fresh fruit, at 3 places at the table and waited. Dara cracked first. She showed up at the cabin. I wasn't surprised she'd figured out where I'd gone. What surprised me was her mother standing beside her. Sheila Quinn, founder of Meridian Investments, Viridian Studio's biggest competitor. "We need to talk," Dara said. Her young face looked older, haunted. They told me everything over bitter coffee. How Sheila had approached Dara 6 months ago. How the plan started small, just keeping tabs on Viridian's projects. How Ethan had discovered Dara's snooping and turned it to his advantage, making her a triple agent. How Naomi had been brought in to create distance between the theft and the source. The goal was to devalue Viridian, Sheila said, businesswoman to the end. Buy it cheap after the scandal broke? I didn't know. She glanced at her daughter. I didn't know they'd make it personal. I studied Dara's shaking hands. The cloud drive, you backed up everything. She nodded. 2 access points, one for Ethan, one for my mother. I thought I was protecting the work, keeping it safe from both of them, but you were feeding it to vultures on both sides. The twist was elegant, really. While I'd been watching my husband and best friend betray me, a larger machine had been dismantling my life's work piece by piece. Corporate espionage dressed up as personal drama. I could have screamed, could have thrown them out. Instead, I pulled out my laptop. "You're going to help me fix this." "Why would you trust us?" Sheila asked. I don't, but you're going to help anyway. I opened the files Marisol had found. Because you're both now accessories to federal wire fraud. And I'm willing to bet you'd rather be witnesses than defendants. Dara started crying. Her mother's face went pale. Outside, Echo Lake stretched silent and deep. The hearing was set for a Tuesday, not a criminal trial. A Vermont Arts Foundation Ethics Board review. But everyone who mattered would be there. I arrived alone, carrying a single presentation board and a laptop. The room filled quickly. Board members, donors, journalists, other artists. Ethan sat with his lawyers. Naomi with hers. Dara and Sheila were nowhere to be seen. They'd already given depositions. I didn't accuse, I simply presented. This is my journey as an artist, I began, projecting the first slide. Starting here, age 19, first sketch of the floating house. For 40 minutes, I laid out 15 years of work. Every design, dated and documented. The evolution of my style. The coffee stain on the original. Time-lapse videos of me working, pulled from security cameras I'd installed in my own studio years ago for insurance. Then I showed what had been done to it. The alterations, the re-aging, the shell companies, the money trail. When I finished, the room was silent. One board member cleared his throat. Ms. Hale, any response? Naomi stood, tears already falling. I thought it was just business. Claire has so many ideas, I didn't think she'd miss a few. Ethan said. She stopped, looked at him. He said she'd never notice. Ethan didn't stand, didn't speak, just gathered his papers and walked out. The board voted unanimously. Naomi's works were removed from all exhibitions. Her funding was revoked, and criminal investigation would be recommended. I packed up my presentation in the same silence I'd maintained for weeks. But as I reached the door, something broke loose. Not tears, laughter, free and wild and mine. That night, alone in the cabin, I discovered something else. The nausea I'd attributed to stress had another cause. The test showed 2 lines. I sat on the bathroom floor, finally crying, not for what I'd lost, for what I'd found. I didn't go back to the Brattleboro house. Ethan could have it. The mortgage was in his name anyway, something I'd agreed to for tax purposes early in our marriage. Another small erosion I'd missed. Instead, I stayed at Echo Lake, filed for divorce, started over. The Willow Fund launched in September, named for my mother. We helped artists recover stolen work, navigate IP theft, rebuild after betrayal. The first grant went to a potter whose partner had sold her designs to a mass manufacturer. Viridian Studio became Still Root Studio, smaller, quieter, but entirely mine. I worked through the pregnancy alone, by choice. Ethan sent one letter, asking about paternity. I sent back the test results and nothing else. He signed away parental rights without a fight. I think he was relieved. Naomi tried to call once. I didn't answer. She left a voicemail. I'm sorry, I got lost. You were so bright, and I wanted to shine too. I deleted it. Forgiveness would come someday, maybe, but not yet. Dara wrote actual letters, handwritten apologies that I kept but didn't answer. She was young, she'd been manipulated, but trust, once shattered, doesn't easily rebuild. Winter came early that year. I worked by the frozen lake, designing homes that worked with nature instead of against it. Small spaces, honest materials, nothing that pretended to be more than it was. My belly grew. The baby moved. I sang to her while I drew. Old songs my mother had hummed in this same room. Sometimes I felt Mom there, in the creak of the floorboards, the whistle of wind through cracks. I wasn't alone. I was finally myself. June was born in June. Poetic timing she'd probably hate as a teenager. The labor was long, hard, beautiful. I held her afterward, this tiny, perfect person who knew nothing of betrayal or theft or broken trust, just need and warmth and the fierce grip of new fingers. We live simply now. The cabin's been winterized, expanded slightly. A proper nursery where Mom's sewing room used to be. Still Root Studio runs lean but honest. I take only projects that matter. Affordable housing, community spaces, places where real people live real lives. Every morning, I bundle June against my chest and walk to the lake's edge. The water mirrors the sky, perfect on calm days rippled when wind comes. I tell her stories not about her father or the people who tried to steal our life. Those aren't her stories to carry. Instead, I tell her about the herons that nest in the shallows, about ice crystals and summer algae, about her grandmother who could make anything grow, her grandfather who built this dock with his own hands. Sometimes I see my reflection in the water, not the woman who smiled through betrayal, not the wife who missed every warning sign, just Claire, holding June, building something new from truthful ground. The portfolio on my desk holds next year's projects: a women's shelter in Montpelier, a community garden in White River Junction. Small things that will last. June laughs, a new skill, and reaches for the water. I step back, keeping her safe but not afraid. Someday I'll teach her to swim in this lake, to be strong in deep water, to surface always into light. For now, we just breathe together in the morning silence, complete.